So while I talked about the book in my 2 previous vlogs, nonetheless I thought it'd be good just to go over it, even though I feel like I've covered just about everything I could want to say about it, which again wasn't much given the fact that I didn't really enjoy it. I thought it was again rather crass, just low in general. But nonetheless, if not for this book necessarily, going forward it would kind of be interesting just to have a record of my first thoughts, opinions, kind of perspective on each book that I read. Again, even if those books weren't particularly impactful or interesting in themselves, as well as the fact that, as I just thought a few seconds ago, I could actually start to garner some views. Even if that be 1 or 2, it would be 1 or 2 more that I'm getting now compared to basically, if not literally, 0. Just from people who are curious about the book themselves, have maybe read it and are looking for more recent reviews. So again, who knows, maybe even this video itself could garner half a dozen views, which again would be, if not half a dozen, at the very least 5 more than I would have gotten from just a normal vlog video. Again, in terms of what I thought about the book, the very start of it, where he's still in, I can't remember if it's like college or university, I'd imagine it would be a college, where he's in the college, he's talking with the professor. I did find somewhat endearing. Well, I didn't think it was particularly great or amazing. I still thought it was mediocre at the time. There was kind of an endearing quality to it. I did feel like, but this isn't necessarily my thing, I don't think it's amazing, that it was capturing something off kind of, as the book is famous for, that youthful rebellion. And I also find it interesting that despite being written in the early 50s and set in the kind of late 40s, again, just the style of the book, the kind of offhand nature of it, again, which really comes down to the crudeness of the book, the crassness of it. Again, it was just interesting to perceive that style in a character who acted and fought like Holden did. But again, it just all goes downhill from there, from being slightly endearing but nonetheless mediocre to being almost intolerable. I mean, it's not a particularly long book, but especially as I got further in it, I got further to the end. Even though I knew that I was probably maybe just half an hour or so completing it, there was really this sense of, what is the point? Because especially as he starts to kind of leave the college, we delve more into his thoughts, more into his psychology, in terms of his views on alcohol, drinking, going out to parties every night, talking to girls, kind of early sexual experiences, the incident with the prostitute, for example. Again, just drink, drugs, cigarettes. The kind of charm and endearingness of that early rebellion fades away, and it becomes more of the kind of fake, shallow, unbelievable shallow rebellion of, and again, it's hard to even call it rebellion. He was 16, I was 17 when he was supposedly writing it, but 16 when he did these acts. But what really can be said about a 16-year-old who drinks, who smokes cigarettes, who drops out from school, who isn't really interested in the schoolwork or anything intellectual, who goes to parties, who has very shallow, meaningless, wholly physical and sexual infatuations with girls, who's highly neurotic, again, drinks, cigarettes, to a lesser extent drugs. What can really be said about it? It just seems, again, I struggle to find words for it, just unbelievably shallow, pretentious, arrogant. And again, the character himself, and this is where I feel like it loses the one quality they maybe had at the beginning. Well, two qualities: the endearingness, which definitely drops off, but equally so the kind of the relatability, or at least my ability to empathise with Holden on any level. It's the character is revealed to be increasingly neurotic, not neurotic in a kind of teenage way, a hormonal way. Again, hormonal teenage rebellion, but really neurotic in a kind of, I don't want to necessarily say darker way, but a more disturbing way. Again, I know I talked about this in my two previous vlogs, but the character comes off as psychopathic, possibly sociopathic, definitely kind of schizophrenic, and above all just neurotic. And the whole story has this kind of character to it, as there's really no plot to speak of. It's just kind of a series of anecdotes which become cruder and cruder as the story goes on. There's nothing really to tie it down. There's no overarching plot or idea or theme to the story other than, again, the kind of idea of youth. Again, I hate to say the words youthful rebellion, if you want to characterise it as that. And again, the whole thing just feels completely neurotic. And even within the disparate scenes, the disparate kind of anecdotes, even within that, not in terms of throughout the whole story, but within that, there is an unimaginable sense of neuroticism and schizophrenia within it. As you see that the character has very little attention span, and he'll often just go off on kind of tirades, rants, talking, or I suppose writing as this is supposed to be a memoir over a kind of long weekend about completely random subjects, things that are completely unrelated to what he's actually talking about, to not the main plot of the story, but what could very vaguely even be called the main plot of that scene, of that anecdote. You're constantly being looped in and out of the story by these kind of ridiculous, pretentious, and, as he would put it, phony rants. Again, it's hard to really categorise them as anything. It's just, it's like looking into the mind of, as I says, someone who's extremely neurotic, schizophrenic teenage boy. He's not particularly interesting, he's not intelligent. I don't find that he has any redeeming qualities. He doesn't really seem to empathise with any of the other characters in any deeper, meaningful way, other than, again, the very shallowest and most meaningless ways. His life is completely obsessed with drink, alcohol. You can't even necessarily say sex, but sexual infatuations with girls, and just utter crap, utter rubbish. Again, it's really hard to not kind of look down upon and despise Holden, not just as a character, but as a human being, as a person. His nature is just off the lowest, and it's very easy to understand why this book was banned in America by so many school boards. And I have to say that that ban was completely 100% justified. I mean, I don't necessarily feel like the work is worthless. If you want to ask if I could personally write something like it, or something, don't even necessarily want to say quality, but just something like that, I don't think so. So I don't think as a work it's completely worthless, but I think it's really not worth anyone's time reading, if that makes sense. So the work isn't worthless itself, but in terms of taking your time out of your day to experience it, it's worthless. It's a very low value. Again, if it kind of maintained this kind of somewhat endearing nature at the very least, if it stayed true to what it's supposed to be, kind of youthful rebellion of Holden, if it was a genuine and accurate picture of that. And of course I'm familiar with the sense which I couldn't judge that, because being kind of retarded in the way that I am, I didn't experience a lot of the things that I do admit, like alcohol, kind of promiscuous sex, parties, going out, drinking, cigarettes, which I admit is unfortunately more normal for a lot of 16-year-olds. So it isn't necessarily that I'm saying that those things kind of break from it. It's really Holden himself, Holden as a character, Holden as a person, just kind of his perception of it and his extreme just insanity, basically. Again, I really feel like I'm just going over myself, but it's very hard for me to comprehend. It's just utter neuroticism, utter schizophrenia. So well, I feel like so I have to maybe, again, on the shallowest level, drinking, cigarettes, promiscuous sex, do kind of appeal to and shadow that kind of fake youthful rebellion. The character himself is simply too really mentally deranged for that to hold up. So even on that level, the kind of thesis of the book, the point of the book, capturing the youthful rebellion, I think it fails utterly and completely. So yeah, I don't think it is much worth whatsoever. Just kind of thinking of what else I could say about it before I inevitably turn the video off and then think, forgot about that again. It's really hard to say. I could talk about some anecdotes in the book itself, but again, it's just, what would you even talk about? I suppose the one thing that I could leave off with is my kind of disdain, not just in kind of media and culture. And again, I think Holden's example, the example of this book, The Catcher in the Rye, I don't think I even mentioned the title of the book, but of course that'll be in the title of the video, is particularly disgusting and just doesn't represent it well. But I really despise that youthful rebellion in general, the kind of youthful rebellion of cigarettes, of alcohol, of promiscuous sex, because it's, again, just off the shallowest, the most meaningless kind of rebellion. It's kind of an anti-rebellion in a way, because while one might be rebelling in some kind of sense, and I don't even think this is true against a society, again, when you look at when it's in the movies, when it's on TV, when it's in worthless books like this, how can it be called rebellion when a lot of your friends, a lot of people around you are doing it? How can it be called rebellion? But in whatever sense it can be called rebellion, you know, you're rebelling against what? Society, civilization, higher ideals, to pursue meaningless promiscuity, to fall prey to your hormones, to become addicted to drugs. Again, even if those drugs be something as simple as nicotine or alcohol, the only thing that you're rebelling against is a kind of higher ideal. Again, for the sake of really addiction, intoxication, brain damage, just a meaningless, listless life of complete idleness, no introspecting. Whatever introspection there may be is done under the realm of, again, just listless idleness. Again, there's just a sense of shallowness from it that I really despise, not just in terms of the subject itself or Holden, but people in real life, teenagers, 16-year-olds who pursue that kind of lifestyle. Again, just what can you say about it? It's completely shallow, listless. It's just plain idleness. It's rebelling against nothing but your own spirit, your own sense of betterment, for the sake of drugs, promiscuity, your hormones. You're you're rebelling against any higher ideals, anything that could be higher or better than yourself, essentially against your own body. You're rebelling against the kind of mind or the spirit, which is the exact opposite of what you should be rebelling against, to fall prey to the body. So again, not a book that I'll ever read again, unless it may be in 20, 30 years, a long time in the future, just to kind of, again, it's a short book, it's not going to take much out of my time, just to see, kind of reflect on it. But for that being said, 100% I wouldn't recommend it, and I'd rate it not necessarily the lowest possible mark. Again, I think it's of some worth, but certainly a low one. I don't think it deserves the praise it gets, the acclamation it gets. I don't think it should be taught in any school whatsoever. The fact that it is taught in any school, the fact that anyone does praise it, just shows the way that they revel in the characteristics of Holden, and the way that they fall prey to the characteristics of Holden. Again, just the general phoniness, as he would put it, of the book, of the character, of the kind of lifestyle he leads.